All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, and we're gonna hope this goes okay. Trying out a slightly different recording procedure here, a little different software. So hopefully nothing goes too off the rails. Anyway, on the agenda this evening, we've got UFC 314. We are your look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Hope y'all are having a good day. Yeah, we're talking UFC 314 as a review, and boy, the UFC needed a win, didn't they? And on the plus side, it looks they mostly got it. So we'll give that the old review. There is no preview. The UFC is taking this coming Saturday off, and well, you'd like to think that maybe it's, hey, let's not hold a fist fighting event on Easter Sunday. It's because they don't want to run anything opposite WrestleMania. Like, let's be real. So no preview, but we do have a little bit of news to talk about, the usual. So thank you all very much for that. Anything you can do to help out the content is always appreciated. Like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, sharing. Most importantly, perhaps share. Well, most important is that you listen. That's the most important thing. Anything else you can do is deeply, deeply appreciated. So all of that is, again, I'm grateful that you listen at all. Anything else you do, I am super grateful for. So, all right, let's jump into this one, shall we? So, UFC 314. Let me do a little bit of this. I was not able to cover it live, so my apologies for that. Had a thing that actually took even longer than I thought it was going to. I got to watch the main card live, but everything other than that, I think I saw the finish to the Woodson and Ige fight, which we'll get to in a second. So I saw that finish. I didn't see the first two rounds. And then I got to watch the main card live, so I wrote that up, and then I went back and put all. It is amazing how fast you can get through a UFC broadcast if you cut through all the crap. I mean, it's kind of remarkable. The prelims had a broadcast, the video on ESPN Plus, little over 4 hours. Even writing it up, even pausing on occasion to double check something, whether I agreed with what was being said, or if I didn't like the what I'd written, stuff like that. Because I actually had a little bit of time to put some thought into it. I got through all of that in less than 2 hours. I mean, significantly less than 2 hours. That's how bloated, how extraneous these broadcasts are for the UFC. Some of it's unavoidable. I don't pretend otherwise. But man, just when you get to go through it like that, it becomes really obvious. Okay, as for the predictions, how did we do? 9-4. What did I get wrong that I wish I'd gotten right? So what did I get wrong? Verna over Jan. Maybe should have given Verna more credit. Her grappling, of course, is like super, super high level. But her takedown game hadn't really been impressing me lately, and she got a little bit better with that. So Verna maybe should have given more play to. Ige and Woodson, I'll talk about that later. Reyes over Krylov. I should have given the layoff to Nikita Krylov more credit than I did. Just to be honest. And Yair over Pitbull. Am I annoyed I got that one wrong? I am a little annoyed I got that wrong. Little annoyed at that one, but not hugely. So mostly, okay, are there any of those picks that I feel like actually good about? Um, you know what? I'm gonna say no. Like I'm glad it went as good for me as it did. Maybe Tulio? No, no. The commentary talked up Gore like he was supposed to be the favorite, but no, Tulio was the fairly notable favorite. I think there was at least one of those that was an underdog that I got right, but I don't remember. Um, Yeah, maybe the main event. Maybe the main event I feel good about getting right because I vacillated on that one a fair bit. But yeah, so 9-4 for the event brings me to 116-40-1. There was a draw on the year, so thumbs up so far. I'm kind of okay with that. All right. But that's about as close as I'm going to get to breaking my arm, patting myself on the back here. All right, let's move to the fights in particular. The bulk of this is going to be talking about the main event. The rest of it, it wasn't a bad card. It really wasn't. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I don't have a lot to say about most of it, which is weird. But okay, hang on. Before we get to the fights, one minor thing. So the UFC announced that Amanda Nunes is going into the Hall of Fame on the pay-per-view. That's when they announced it. One easily deserved, non-factor of a pick. Like I say, non-factor of a pick. Like there's no question. There's nothing even approximating a question there. Of course, Amanda Nunes is going to the Hall of Fame. Of course, she belongs there. Here's the thing. They had one of their big, like, hey, here's the press conference for some of our next events that we're all just kind of mashed together. Um, Including Juliana Pena and Kayla Harrison, and Pena's trash talk is still just the worst. But there was a question asked like, hey, would Amanda Nunes come out of retirement to fight Kayla Harrison? And Nunes seemed slightly receptive to the idea. I mean, she was like nodding and smiling, but I don't know how seriously to take that. And it just needs to be said, okay? Look, Amanda Nunes is, for my money, the best female fighter the sport's ever seen. You could argue Cyborg, and there's some real merit to that argument, but to me it's Nunes, and I think to a lot of people it's Nunes. So seeing her come back would be a thing. Like it wouldn't be a bad thing. But how do I want to talk about this? Okay. Everyone used to clown on Demetrius Johnson's pay-per-view buy rates. They used to just like laugh at them. And I'm not saying, and look, he sold poorly for the majority of his time as a UFC champion. No matter how good he was, and he was great, one of the best, he never really sold. That's just the way it is, and there's no heat on me saying that. Because for a while then it was like, yeah, the guy's got the worst selling pay-per-view in the modern history of the UFC. Guess who broke that record? I'll give you a hint. It's Amanda Nunes. As great as she was, and she was great, the greatest female that's, done this, we're suddenly pretending she was a big star and a big draw. She owns, I think, the lowest two pay-per-views. Like, we're celebrating the lowest selling UFC champion from 5 years ago coming back. That's a real bad way to put that, I know, and it seems like I'm just trying to dump all over the idea. But I'm making a point here about, like, where's the UFC? Where's the sport? Where's the hype? Women's bantamweight is so bad. We're looking at a woman who's been retired for, again, multiple years at this point, to maybe come back for kind of a one-off fight. And again, she sold poorly for a lot of her career. She was on UFC 200. Yeah, that she's not the reason that sold. Look at the event she headlined before the UFC stopped reporting buy rates. They're not good. And I have nothing but respect and admiration for Amanda's career. Nothing but. But like this is kind of where we are? I don't know. I don't know. So on the one hand, again, super congratulations to her going into the Hall of Fame. 1,000,000% deserved. Easy call. Easy call. I kind of hope she stays retired, if I'm being honest. So, anyway, let's move on to the main event because that was a little piece of business that took place there, and I wanted to talk for a second or two about that. All right. Main event for the vacant featherweight title, Alexander Volkanovski breaks several negative trends. Defeats Diego Lopez via unanimous decision 249-46 and a 48-47 to reclaim the gold. Okay. The scoring, very briefly, I was 49-46. I gave Lopez the fourth. You could give him the second. He did drop Volk briefly in that one. He caught him cleanly. I mean, how much you want to call that like a serious knockdown? He did get, he kind of hit the ground like hand down, got back up. He Lopez also got like off balanced and kind of stumbled back into the cage off of a punch on that one. So two's up in the air a little bit. Could go either way. But like 1, 3, and 5 are not even remotely in dispute. Unless you're like drunk Sean Shelby sitting at ringside going, no, no, Lopez clearly won 2 and 3. Like, get out of here. Just get out of here. Even commentary clowned him for that one, and rightfully so. And the commentary was not all that great for most of that card, but, Daniel Cormier is intermittently useful, and Joe Rogan still has a degree of enthusiasm, but sometimes he's a little bit checked out, and it's a little bit obvious. I mean, Anik's a professional and does what he can, so good on him. So here's the negative trends that Alexander Volkanovski overcame. 1, he is the first male fighter in UFC history, 35 or older, to win a UFC title fight of any kind, defending or claiming, at lightweight or lower. Even at welterweight, it's only been done a couple of times. And Bilal will probably get another one because he's got a very favorable stylistic matchup coming up, but that's another discussion. But lightweight and down, nobody 35 or older had won a UFC title fight, again, either to claim a belt or to defend it. And he's 36, and he broke that trend. That's a big thing for him to have overcome. When you think about the number of talent, not just talented fighters, but like great Hall of Fame caliber fighters. BJ Penn, Benson Henderson, Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, Dominic Cruz, Demetrius Johnson, Henry Cejudo. Oh, do I want to count him in that discussion? Yeah. He didn't. I mean, he look, whatever you think of the guy, he failed to overcome that hurdle, and he tried. Like some all-time great fighters. Dude, George St. Pierre didn't at welterweight or below. And GSP is like one of the 3 best ever to do this. Period. Some superbly talented fighters have not been able to overcome that. And he did. He was also coming off back-to-back losses. Both of them stoppages. Luke Thomas made a video on this, like the history of guys trying to coming off of that scenario and then trying to fight for a belt. The closest you got to that being successful was Randy Couture at one point, who had back-to-back losses and then won an interim title, and I think that was at heavyweight. Hang on, let me double-check this. It's been a minute since I looked at the specifics of this. So, yeah, it was the interim. Okay, this is what it was. He lost the heavyweight title to Josh Barnett. Then Barnett was stripped of it for failing a drug test. Then he lost to Rico Rodriguez for the vacant title. Then he dropped to light heavyweight and won the interim title against Chuck Liddell. And then went on to unify it with Tito Ortiz. But that's the only guy. So changed weight classes in a totally different era of the sport. And even then, again, it was an interim thing. Bucking that trend is ridiculous. And Volk did it. Um, the other negative trend, he came out on the right end of the Drake curse. So look, the Drake curse is not really a curse. Drake's just a very bad bettor. Um, it was just a meme for a while that people would track what he would bet because he was so bad at it. There was a string of like 8 or 9 fights in a row. It was like, hey, money came in from Drake on so and so, and then they'd lose. Volk isn't the first guy to win after Drake bet on them. It's happened at least, what, 2 or 3 times before this? So it happens. It actually just doesn't happen regularly. Drake is just bad at betting on MMA. So he overcame all that. So my hat's off to him on it. This was in a lot. This is not Volk's masterpiece. His masterpiece fight is the third fight with Max Holloway. That is a thing of beauty. Like you should hang that in the Louvre, so to speak, right? This one is like this almost unlikely capstone kind of moment. All the adversity. Took time off, knocked out twice in a row. Too old for the weight class anymore. He lost the belt when he was 35. Right? He'd hit that marker, and then Topuria just blasted him. So comes back, fights a young, talented guy, and does what he's always done, kind of, for Volk. I mean, the fight itself, he was constantly moving, constantly turning Lopez, constantly getting him out of position, and then tagging him. Not with the biggest shots in the world, but his jab was always working, landing inside leg kicks, few calf kicks, uh, combinations. Anytime they actually got into the pocket, he would exchange with Lopez a little bit, and then before exiting. Had a nice takedown in the first round and got some decent ground and pound off. This was in a lot of respects, this was a vintage Volkanovski kind of performance. Volkanovski doesn't have any singular overwhelming attribute. He doesn't have one touch, you go away, knockout power. He's got good power, but he's not like, he's not doing the Josh Emmett thing, or pick your favorite power puncher. I don't really care. He's not doing that. He's not a jiu-jitsu savant, tying people into knots and drowning them on the ground. He's not an overwhelming wrestler who's like force will just smash you into the ground. He's not even how would I describe Merab in this respect? Because he's kind of the example I think about. He's not even a guy who is just reliant on workload. Right? Merab's thing is, I'm not saying Merab's bad, okay, but if you want to look at how Merab wins fights, he does a lot of, maybe this stuff I'm doing doesn't work early, but I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to overwhelm you and wear you down because I can keep doing this at a level and a pace that you can't. Volkanovski doesn't have like this big attritive workload, drown you style of just, let's have a sprint for 5 rounds. He just has technical wizardry in almost all phases of the game. He's great about faking and feinting you. He's great about moving. He keeps a good work rate, but he's also really, really good at I said this before. He depresses your output. Like he did it if he can do that to Max Holloway, and he did. He did it to Yair Rodriguez. Here he did it to Diego Lopez. Volkanovski landed almost 100 more strikes than Lopez over the course of this fight. I mean, just a really big number like that. He just keeps you from doing. He freezes you. He keeps you in motion. He keeps you off balance. He keeps you trying to turn and catch him. And the whole time he's hitting you. Well, not the whole time, but any opportunity he sees, he will throw something. He will jab you. He will kick you. He'll fire a right hand. He cracked Lopez with his right hand a couple of times. Like, just, that's what he will do to you. the more time you give him to do stuff like that. And Diego Lopez just tried to fight Volkanovski on Volkanovski's terms, and that just doesn't work. Look at how Topuria was able to get to him. Topuria drops the first round, first of all. Second, like, there's some real specific footwork patterns and timing things that he has to key into to get Volkanovski into some bad positions. That doesn't mean Diego Lopez had no success in this fight. He had moments of success. He was able to get a decent timing on Volk's jab in the second and caught him with a counter right that kind of dropped Volk for a second. Volk got up and got a little pissed at himself. We actually got a little bit heated for a minute there. And then the fourth round, he catches him with kind of a left that grazes through Volkanovski's left eye. So there's a cut that gets opened up under his right eye. Because Volkanovski's one of those guys who just kind of marks up. Some guys do, some guys don't. That's one of those weird things in fighting. I mean, for a long time, it was impossible to mark up BJ Penn. George St. Pierre, Fedor Emelianenko, Alexander Volkanovski, some of these guys just mark up a little bit easier than others, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's fighting. You're going to get hit. And some guys show damage more than others. It's just how it is. But this other punch, again, it was a legal punch. First, not a finger poke. Punch from Diego Lopez. It glances across his eye, and he loses vision in that eye. Then he spends the next little bit of that round. Then he also gets hit with an uppercut. Just trying to... He was winning that fourth round, too, before that little bit from Lopez. And it's not until like the start of the fifth when his eyesight starts coming back. That's kind of what you can deal with in some of these fights. And yeah, he persevered through a lot of it. Again, lovely movement, lovely timing. Mixing in takedown attempts, and Diego Lopez was good about stopping them. Lopez only got taken down once. But if you have to start thinking about it, you have to start thinking about it. Look, Diego Lopez has some really good elements to his game. Because I don't want to say game again, but I kind of have to here. He is a game fighter. He went Terminator mode a few different times in this fight. He's just getting, tagged up, jabs, right hands, and he just keeps coming forward, tries to force a brawl at times. Just wouldn't go down, despite the, he got hit a lot, man. Not like an inadvisably high amount, but he got hit a lot. And he just ate all of it, pretty much. So he's got a really good chin. Volk's not the heaviest puncher in the division, so worth noting there as well that, would he be able to eat punches like that from serious power punchers in the weight class? Who knows? But thus far, chin seems good. Got a lot of offense when he does throw it. Some of the problems he ran into, and some of this is what Volk is doing, some of this is of his own making. He got feinted and frozen a lot. He fixed that a little bit as the fight wore on, but he just didn't throw a whole lot, which was a problem. He also really struggled to actually corral Volkanovski in any kind of way. His jab was working at a few different moments, but he seems to really be focused on his right hand. And Volkanovski just constantly shifted to his own right. That's the way he was circling most of the fight. Little bit of time he'd go back the other direction just to change it up a little bit, but mostly he was circling to his right. And if you don't have a good left hook, or are not willing to throw a left hook, or a spinning kick, or something to try and corral that movement, he's just going to keep doing it. The number of times Volkanovski was able to just reset his positioning, reset his distance, get back to the center of the cage, you should not allow him to do that. It shouldn't have been that easy at a bare minimum. Even if you're struggling, just giving him that as much as he got it, you can't win a fight with him that way. It's not gonna happen. He's too good. He's just too good. And yeah, that was rough for Lopez. Lopez never tried to take down Volkanovski, and that was a little bit surprising to me. Lopez's grappling is actually like the best part of his game. And I understand not wanting to be under Volkanovski for a long period of time. I get that. But when you're taking the best part of your game out of the equation and then actively fighting off all the takedown attempts he puts in place, you've just removed some of your best offensive weaponry in favor of just trying to knock the guy out. Not really a winning proposition. So I expect Diego Lopez will get back to the title level. He did show good things here. He fought well for 5 rounds, so cardio not really an issue. He showed a lot of durability. Not always the best thing to show off, but he did. And it's not like his offense was completely ineffective. When he was able to land, he did a little bit of damage. His delivery system is just not great, is the big problem there. If you're not going to meet him on his terms, he struggles to force you to fight on his terms. And that's a problem. And great fighters don't just take advantage of openings you give them. They force you to give them openings in the first place. That's a lot of what Volkanovski was doing. And worked out wonderfully for him. This was a really good performance from Volkanovski. This was your fight of the night, and I have no problem with that. I don't even know what would have been all that close as a second. As a total fight. Yeah, I don't think anything else really was all that close. So, good on Volkanovski. Genuinely heartwarming moment. I don't know how long he's going to hold on to the belt this time around. I imagine not super long. But even if he gets like one more title defense, that would still be just, again, remarkable in so many respects to overcome what he's overcome. And, you know, I'm glad that he's starting to get his flowers. I really am. So, good on Volkanovski. Really, really excellent performance from him. All right. Co-main event, Paddy Pimblett runs over Michael Chandler, TKOs him 307 of the third. Not a lot here. Chandler never could close distance reliably. Paddy's striking is still not great, but he's picked a couple of weapons that work for his game. If you're at distance, he'll poke out a jab. It's not a very, like, super potent jab, but it can land and it can bother you. And he'll bother you with calf kicks and front kicks, which are good weapons. I don't mean to say that they aren't. But he's chosen weapons that will kind of just harass you and make you uncomfortable enough to give him an opportunity to clinch up to get you down. His wrestling is still not great. I should rephrase that. His takedown game is still not great. But he gets to the back standing very well, and his mat return game from there is actually quite good. And for the purposes of discussing skills, I actually do separate mat returns from takedowns. You don't separate them statistically in the UFC, and I get it. In amateur wrestling, you do because they score differently. I separate them when you talk about skills because taking someone down is a little bit different than being able to capitalize on a locked hand position. Locked hand positions are very, very powerful, but there's something kind of inherent to the positional reality of them that makes me separate them. Because there are some guys who are like monsters at takedowns, but struggle to either retain control on the ground or struggle to get multiple takedowns, again, especially out of like, just the rear waist lock. Getting a lot of mat returns from there safely that you can then work from. Some guys who are good wrestlers struggle a little bit with that. And Paddy, from that position, Paddy's overall grappling game is really, really strong. He threw in a lot of strikes to go along with this one, which was a nice development from him. He got a good win. I don't think it's an accident that he should have lost the Jared Gordon fight, and the response was, okay, here's old man Tony Ferguson, and Pimblett kind of gassed in that fight. Here's older guy King Green, who was on a decent little run for his career, but look, years and miles on Mr. Green were really adding up. And now it's a guy who shouldn't have been in the top 10 but was for nebulous reasons, who pissed away 2 years of the last tail end of his athletic prime, and whose two wins in the UFC are his debut over Dan Hooker and the aforementioned old man Tony Ferguson. I'm not saying that this wasn't a good win for Paddy Pimblett. It was. It really was. This was eye-opening to a lot of people. In some respects, me included. But it's time to stop giving him favorable matchups. And Michael Chandler, for him, believe it or not, favorable matchup. He said he wants to fight Charles Oliveira next. I don't think that's unreasonable. Look, he wants to fight the top 5. I don't think that's out of the question. And frankly, depending on who he gets in the top 5, that's winnable for him. If you ask me, like, do I think he can beat Charles Oliveira? Yeah. I can see his path to victory against Charles Oliveira. I don't find it the most likely outcome, but I can see how he would do it. So, that's a possibility. Yeah, Chandler he got a bad cut under his on his left, yeah, his left cheek under his eye. Look, Chandler came to the UFC a bit too late. Has had some really good fights, but he's kind of over it at this point. And wasting 2 years on a Conor fight that was never going to happen didn't do him any favors. So I don't know exactly what's next for him, but he'll get some higher profile fight that'll probably be fun when it's all said and done. As for Paddy, yeah, the somebody near or around the title picture is definitely warranted. I don't know how much I like his chances against some of them. His defense is still a bit of a problem. He gets away with it because he's kind of long for the weight class. But if you look at the mechanics of his striking, there's opportunities for him to be countered that he has found ways to make difficult to really actualize, but they're still there, and that is another thing that kind of just needs to be said out loud. Next up, Yair Rodriguez defeats Patricio Pitbull via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Pitbull just looked kind of lifeless for most of this. Basically pissed away the first round. Tried some takedowns later, but never got a whole lot of things going. Didn't throw a whole lot. Yair kind of got to just do what he was doing. Long-range strikes, long-range kicking game. He got on top of Pitbull a couple of times and had some decent ground and pound. One of the fights coming out that got thrown around was Yair and John Silva, who we'll talk about in a minute or two here, but yeah, I don't want to see Rodriguez and Volkanovski again. I don't think it's unfair to still have some questions about Volk's chin at this point. Not that I think, getting hurt by Diego Lopez is some glaring knock on his chin. It's not. Diego Lopez hits really hard. But the way that fight played out did not make me think, oh, Volkanovski's chin is, ironclad. I think he knows how to fight around some of it, but you can't rebuild your chin after what happened to him in those consecutive fights. You can hide it, and you can figure out ways to fight around it, but I think some of his punch resistance in terms of what could he take to the head I think it's starting to go a little bit, which is understandable, all things considered. I just still don't think that Yair has a whole lot to offer him. But Yair and Gian Silva or something like that, I don't think that's unfair. Rodriguez did say he wants to fight for the belt at the upcoming Noche event in Guadalajara. I find that unlikely now that if Diego Lopez had won, I think they would have done it, for the record. They might still do Lopez and Rodriguez, but I don't think Rodriguez gets a title shot off of this fight. It just strikes me as a little unlikely. You've got a few too many guys out there who have better cases than Yair, who was also out for a little bit. Yeah, unfortunate arrival for Pitbull. I think got to the UFC a little too late. Commentary pretending that he wasn't good, or that the levels to this mean that being in the UFC at all makes you better than everybody that came over. Like, no, I don't buy that. But not a great introduction to Pitbull if you are only a UFC guy. Go watch some of his stuff from Bellator, man. There's a lot about Pitbull that is a very special fighter. Also featherweight next, Gian Silva. He deals with Bryce Mitchell. Ninja chokes him. 3:52 of the second round. Won the first round pretty handily. Landed some good-ish punches on Bryce. Stopped his takedowns, and that's really the big thing. Once Bryce Mitchell wasn't able to force a lot of grappling out of that, I mean, he did get Silva down in the first, but he fell into a guillotine. He got out of it, but that was actually a fairly tight guillotine. Then as they're wrestling around, Silva grabs a ninja choke while they're standing, and he gets out of it, Mitchell does, but man, he should have been a bit more cautious about that, because second round, it's still not going great for him. He's starting to shoot without setting it up as much. He's just grabbing at stuff and then pressing really hard into Silva. The ninja choke really works when the other guy is like really pressing his head into your chest. It actually makes it easier to get things into position if they're giving you that. And got it. They fell to the ground, but it was tight enough that even though Mitchell tried to roll through, it was just too locked in. He tapped and then went to sleep. Really good win for Silva, man. He's kind of a problem for that division. Again, him and Yair kind of got floated by commentary. That would be fine by me. Absolutely fine by me. Worth mentioning about Bryce Mitchell. I'm not here to talk about some of his worldviews, but stopping his game is actually a little bit more difficult than you might think. If you just look at a lot of what he does, you might think, well, you stop the takedown, then his whole game falls apart. That's true, but it's not as easy to do. He's actually got a striking game that is kind of like Paddy Pimblett's, designed to get you a little bit uncomfortable, get you out of position or making bad choices, so he can force his grappling onto you. And Silva, ate some calf kicks and started countering them eventually, but Mitchell didn't. If that guy had any punching power, that's really what's lacking in Bryce Mitchell's game. Decent hands and the threat that they pose to open up the rest of what he wants to do. Because if you're not too worried about what he's offering you power-wise on the feet, that makes dealing with the part of his game that is really, really good a lot easier to do. Dominic Reyes next up. Dominic Reyes knocked out Nikita Krylov with a left pull counter too, basically. 224 of the first. Krylov just got a little bit too antsy, lunging forward, leading with his chin. Reyes just slipped back just a little bit, then left hand straight down the pipe. Boom. Knocked him out. Reyes said he wants to fight somebody else, near the top now. Feels like he's kind of getting back and better. This was a much more beneficial win for him when it comes to trying to rebuild than the last couple, especially the Anthony Smith one, which really just felt weird. So this one seems to be the one where a lot of people are finally like, okay, he's sort of rebuilt himself. Let's see what can happen here again. Um, man, I don't know that I like his chances against, Pereira or Ankalaev or I think Yuri Prochazka would beat him again, just to be honest. But they had a wild fight the first time and would probably have another wild fight. But I think outside of that, I don't know, would he beat Blachowicz? Because Blachowicz already knocked him out to win the belt the first time. I wouldn't hate a rematch there. I still, again, I don't know how much I like Dominic Reyes' chances in that fight, but it's getting to the point with him where it's time to see, what we really might have during this kind of second phase of his career. Maybe the loser of this got announced earlier. I'll talk about the card later, but Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree got announced. Maybe the loser of that is an option, or the winner. Quite frankly, would not be off the table either. There's options, but it's time to, I don't mind that Dominic Reyes got some fights that were a little bit softer touch, a little bit like, let's see if you can get right. It's time to be done with that. To the extent that Krylov represented something still kind of in that range, which is arguable, it's time to be done with that. And let's see what we've really got here at this point with Reyes. But he really, really needed that win, and he did get it. It was a really nice knockout, so kudos to him on that one. On the prelims, Dan Ige defeated Sean Woodson via TKO punches, 112 of the third. Terrible stoppage. Absolutely garbage stoppage by this referee. This referee had a bad night. He did something earlier in the night. Which fight was it? Where I thought he just handled that real badly. It wasn't him for a Rosen. I can't remember. Might have been the fence grabbing in in one of those fights, but he had a bad night. I forget his name, but he was like the one ref you didn't know on this card. This is a terrible stoppage. So I actually did I have it even? I might have had Woodson up 2-0, but apparently the judges much preferred Dan Ige's work. Sean Woodson's style is really good, but most MMA judges just don't seem to get it. He's got a bunch of split decision wins that should not have been split. I don't know. Anyway, so he gets hit and he gets hurt, and Ige looks to swarm. This is in the third round. And Woodson kind of goes for a takedown, goes down for a single leg. It's not going anywhere, and Ige starts firing a little hammer fist to the side of the head. Woodson realizes, yeah, this ain't going my way. Lets go of the leg, puts his hands down, and pushes himself to stand up. And that's when the referee jumps in. It is terrible stoppage. Woodson got done so dirty by this. It was a decent little fight before that, but the stoppage just cast this giant pall over the whole thing. Not Ige's fault. He was doing his job. But yeah, bad call by the ref. Virna Jandiroba probably secured her shot at the strawweight title with a unanimous decision win over Yan Xiaonan. 30-27 across the boards. Once they hit the mat, Virna's game there was just way ahead of Yan. She ended the first and the third with almost fully locked in arm bars. The third in particular, that was the one in the first round. Give that another 20 seconds to develop, and she probably gets the tap. In the third round, it was more like 4 seconds, and Jan's going to have to tap. It was real close. It was at the second round, and then the fourth was the one where she ended up going for the second was the one she ended up going for a knee bar. Jandiroba's skill set is lopsided, but her grappling is very, very good. I don't like her chances against Zhang. I think Zhang's physical strength is a problem for her. I think the punching power is a problem. But she has earned her shot at the belt, and I think they should give it to her next. Chase Hooper defeated Jim Miller via unanimous decision, 2 29-28 and a 30-27. Some fun grappling down the stretch here. I actually gave Miller the first. But, he faded a little bit down the stretch, and it was fun, but, Hooper won fair and square. Julian Erosa knocked out, or TKO Darren Elkins, 4:15 to the first. Okay. MMA corners suck. So Elkins gets a takedown, and then stands over Erosa, and Erosa hits him with an up kick, legal, but he clobbers him with one, and then gets up, and Darren Elkins, when he regains his feet, is clearly hurt. Has no, like, his balance is all over the place. Even for a guy who looks a little bit uncoordinated at times, at the best of times, which Elkins does, like, he's getting really hurt and off balanced. And Erosa just kind of is able to march him down, fight off a few takedowns, beat him up, hits him with a really nice knee, couple of elbows. The ref was, and then a bunch of hammer fists as Elkins was holding onto a low single. Elkins' corner could have and probably should have thrown in the towel not long after they stood him up after that up kick, because after they stood up after the up kick. He looked real out of sorts, even for a guy who takes a lot of damage normally. And then he never recovered. He actually got little bits of time where, like, maybe he can, but the way he started reacting to being hit, like, the corner should have stepped in. And the ref probably should have stepped in sooner and didn't, and little bit ugly there. Little bit ugly. I'm starting to become a little bit concerned about Darren Elkins. On the early prelims, Michal Oleksiejczuk defeated Cedric Dumas via TKO punches and elbows. 2:49 of the first. Dumas did not care for this stoppage. Here's the problem with his protestations. So he gets kind of dropped by a left hand, looks a little, and Oleksiejczuk gets on top. Dumas gets butterfly guard and is covering up. He's got like the boxing high guard, both hands up in front of the face. And Oleksiejczuk is just throwing elbows because he can. He's throwing, 12 to 6. He's throwing, and because they're legal. And they're not really getting through consistently, but he's still just hammering away with these things. The referee, Mark Goddard in this case, 3 different times tells Dumas, you've got to get out of here. Even if they're not getting through, you're not improving. What are you doing to actually, like, stop yourself from being elbowed? You're covering up. Okay, cool. That's your, like, it's said all the time, just covering up is not intelligent defense. Intelligent defense is an ability to extricate yourself from the position wherein you are taking damage. Covering up is a necessary component for a lot of this. But if you're not using your butterfly hooks, if you're not trying to off balance, if you're not trying to stand, if you're not trying to do anything to get out of bottom position being elbowed, the referee is going to step in. So I can understand Dumas's, like, annoyance at this because he didn't get hit all that cleanly with most of these. But you've got to address the position. You've got to intelligently defend yourself, and that's not just sitting here going, you know what, this doesn't really hurt. Let me just let him keep wailing away on me. You've got to do stuff. Anything he would have done would have worked, by the way. Any use of the butterfly hooks, any attempt to off-balance Oleksiejczuk, any motion to try and regain your feet or get to your knees, like anything probably would have made the referee go, okay, you're still there. I can see that these are being blocked, but you're not doing anything to not get hit anymore. And you have to do something to address that reality. And he didn't. Flyweight Sumudarji defeated Mitch Raposo via split decision, 29-28. Yeah, I don't get giving Raposo 2 rounds. He earned the first, but 2 and 3 I thought were pretty clearly Sumudarji's. Minor note here on Mitch Raposo. Okay. There have been a few MMA fighters recently in the UFC who have come out to professional wrestlers' entrance music. There was someone last week or the week before who came out to Bianca Belair's theme. Left a bad taste in my mouth. Mitch Raposo comes out to Kingdom, which is Cody Rhodes' theme. What are we doing here? I assume because they're all owned by TKO that, like, there's not a rights issue, but I got a real hard. So the big one for this was, and I got a kick out of it the first couple of times. After that, it got old, for the record. Colby Covington coming out to Kurt Angle's WWE theme. Mild amusement from me the first time. After that, de-escalation of appreciation. I feel like Izzy briefly used the Undertaker's for the fight where he came out dressed as the Undertaker. Which was that the Romero or I think it was Cannonier. It was Romero or Cannonier, so it was just like a very lackluster fight as a general rule from an excitement standpoint. I think it was Cannonier. Now we've got an 0-1 flyweight on the prelim coming out to the face of the WWE's entrance music. Please stop doing this, MMA fighters. I don't know if there's some kind of mandate for this, but man, it just comes across as really the weirdest combination of like lazy and try hard. And it feels wrong. It doesn't work. Very rarely does that work. Again, it briefly worked for Colby. I don't think it works anymore for him if he tries to do it again, for the record. Like, there were diminishing returns on that. And I don't know. It feels weird. It just doesn't feel right. A lot of things from WWE actually, well, not a lot, but man, they really tried to get over John Anik a lot, said, someone might get a championship opportunity after this win. I had flashbacks. You have no idea. If you didn't watch WWE around the time that Vince got real weird about specific wording and phrases, because almost like overnight, they tried to change the lexicon. You no longer had title belts. You had titles or championships. What the champion holds is not a belt, it's a title. Now, I get that like they are the champion, that is a title. The physical belt signifies that, but it's a freaking belt. Hearing, oh no, he got hit with the title when somebody decks somebody else with the belt is just stupid. He did not hit him with the concept of what this title represents. He hit him with a physical thing. A belt. Goes around your waist. Vince didn't like the phrase title shot, so everything became championship opportunities. There's a bunch of weird stuff like that were like, you can find it if you're so inclined. Like, I forget what the title of it was, but like just banned phrases for the WWE, and championship opportunity is one that he seemed to like because for some reason he didn't like title shot. It's a title shot. That's what it is. You are getting a shot, an opportunity at the belt, the title. Ugh. So man, I had some serious flashbacks going on every time John Anik said that. Like, oh, please stop. Please, for the love, don't do this. Do not go down this road. I beg of you. Don't do it. And also, again, don't use professional wrestlers' theme music. Most of those are crafted or selected specifically for the wrestler. You random woman coming out are not Bianca Belair. And Mitch Raposo, you are not Cody Rhodes. So please, let's not do this. There's a bunch from professional wrestling in terms of presentation and pomp and circumstance that I actually think the UFC could learn from. Changing the vernacular and doubling down on song rights that your parent company already owns the rights to are not it. Please don't do this. Marco Tulio, next up at middleweight, defeated Trishan Gore via TKO 3:16 of the second. They had a little bit of a back and forth first, mostly going Tulio's way, but not exclusively. Then second round, Tulio really laid into him. Tulio looked pretty good. He looked pretty good here. Fought at a really good pace, actually, for middleweights, too. He just... A lot of front kicks, which are good setup weapons. Good punches. He beat up Trishan Gore. He beat that boy down. Kicking everything off, Nora Cornell defeated Haley Cowan. Cornell missed weight. I didn't change my prediction on this, specifically because of, one, the layoff for Haley Cowan, and two, I just don't know that she's all that good. Normally a weight miss makes me kind of... I always take... Anytime somebody misses weight, I take serious consideration to changing my pick, because I'm allowed to. Didn't in this case for the aforementioned reasons. Not a whole lot here. Decent enough win for Cornell, but missing weight's not great. Yeah, that was it. That was the card. So, it was a good night of fights when it was all said and done. So, thumbs up for the UFC on this one. Oh, do I want to talk about it? Let me talk about it very briefly. So, President Trump was in attendance for this, walked out before the pay-per-view. I believe that Donald Trump is a fight fan. I don't have a problem believing that. Bringing with him other people, like I don't know that Elon Musk is much of a fight fan. He might be, but I don't know. I don't think RFK Jr. cares much about fighting. He was there. The director of the FBI was there. Senator Ted Cruz was there. Cruz, I can buy, might be a bit of a fight fan. But I'm not going to lament the previous era of here's the famous people that come to UFC events, and it's David Spade and Anthony Kiedis, and I mean, someone was like, it used to be Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz, and like maybe once or twice if their agency paid for it and told them to, or WME was like, here, comp tickets, go be seen at this other thing that we own, which is mostly how that happened. Most celebrities like that are not really fight fans. They go to boxing fights because boxing events carry a degree of prestige and a little bit the marker of being seen at a big boxing fight is still a status symbol. That's not true for MMA. There are celebrity actors who are fight fans. Charlize Theron is a fight fan. Jason Statham is a fight fan. Paul Walker was an MMA fan. Like, these people, they do exist. I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying I don't have rose-colored glasses for that era when, again, WME was like, hey, fighters, actors that we rep, there's a UFC event in Vegas. You're going to be in proximity. Here's your seat. Show up. We'll show you on the big screen. Lobster. I have no doubt that was what happened there. It's probably still happening in some respect with TKO. I mean, minor note here. Rhea Ripley, WWE wrestler, and her husband, AEW wrestler, Buddy Matthews. They didn't really show Buddy on screen because he worked for the competition, and I don't know how much competition you want to consider AEW. They're an alternative more than like a direct competitor, which is fine. Like, I'm glad AEW exists. But, they're not doing what WWE's doing, which is okay. Make money, be fine. Not here to stoke those fires. I'm glad they exist. But Rhea got shown on the big screen at one point. She was there in attendance. And she was there because TKO owns both of these things. And I imagine they wanted somebody who could be there, would be interested even a little bit in being there. And, hey, there's an Australian fighting in the main event. Rhea Ripley, you're from Australia. So's your husband, actually, so why don't you guys go? And they gave him seats. I mean, it's not like Rhea and Volkanovski have, like, long history. They didn't even know each other before this. They met. You can actually find the video of this, like them meeting backstage for the first time. It's like, oh, very good to meet you. And look, it's cool. She was jazzed for him. She had a good time. Like, they are fellow countrymen. So I'm not saying that she was there as some, like, at gunpoint or anything. But this is just like brand synergy is kind of what they're going for, rather than, like, do I think Rhea Ripley is a big fan of MMA? Probably not. But she doesn't strike me as someone who is, like, again, there against her will. So, but there's a lot of that goes on with MMA stuff, and it's one of the nice things about Trump, man. You can dislike that the UFC has become kind of a conduit for right-wing politics. It's not my favorite thing in the world. At the same time, like, I believe Donald Trump likes fights. I believe he likes watching fighting, boxing, MMA. He's down to watch the violence. I believe that. I'm cool with that. Dragging a chunk of the executive branch and a couple of senators and all these other people to the fights, we're celebrating politicians now. I don't know that I love that. I I don't have another way to say that. And again, I am not out here going, man, I sure do, miss seeing Anthony Kiedis. That dude was like their one constant celebrity, to the extent that you would consider a member of the band for the Red Hot Chili Peppers a celebrity. But, for a long time he was there. And in fairness to Kiedis, he was there for, like, the early prelims. And so I believe he's a fight fan. It was constantly amusing that, like, you could go a bunch of UFC events in a row, and he was the constant, like, hey, famous face, here's Anthony Kiedis. There's a few other random people, but Anthony Kiedis usually there. And David Spade was there somewhat regularly. But, like, those guys aren't, you know. That was the level of celebrity that was being attracted by the UFC in those days. Then a big Hollywood talent agency buys the UFC and kind of, like, forces a few more of their clients to go to events. And then, of course, you get the actors repped by their rival talent agency, like Meryl Streep, going, mixed martial arts are not the arts, though I need another reason to be. Meryl Streep is a phenomenal actress. I can separate art from artist. She is a phenomenal actress who was out there towing the company line to be dismissive of what is in some... I've heard the argument put forth, and I find it a little bit compelling, that the fake scripted drama is the essence of conflict, right? Your fake conflict means nothing in the face of actual conflict. Your job as an actor is to try and get people to buy into your pretend as though it's real, which is not an easy thing to do, and I'm not sitting here trying to demean the profession of acting. If you've never trained in acting or seen people do it, it's actually quite difficult to be a good actor. It really is. To be able to hit the wide emotional range that you have to be able to hit on any given day, depending on what is on the schedule, on the shooting schedule, that's actually quite difficult. And so I am not here saying, oh no, cushy actors. Like, no, that's a hard job. It really is. It's a, hard job that a lot of people would take over some other hard jobs, but the notion that it's easy, the profession gets a little bit demeaned, partially because a lot of actors are weird people who step outside of they go out of bounds a lot for whatever reason. That's a whole other thing. But anyway, like, if the essence of drama is conflict, then actual conflict is the height of dramatic art, not your reading Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. I really do. But what's more what is the height of dramatic of the art and drama? Is it watching Claudius and Hamlet trade barbs again? I know how that ends. Or is it watching two guys fist fighting? The artistry of martial arts is not something that should be demeaned or ignored or diminished just because your talent agency is in a hissy fit, or because you're overly pretentious and think too much of yourself. But hey, what do I know? Anyway, but yeah, now we're to the point where it's like, Look at these elderly politicians, or these law enforcement personnel. In some, like, jeez, I don't know, man. I Like I said, I don't have nostalgia for that other period of history. I was like, hey, here's the celebrities who are either here at gunpoint or the few of them that actually like the fights. I don't have nostalgia for that time period, but I can also acknowledge it was cool the first time I saw the President of the United States show up to watch a UFC event live. It really was. It's kind of not so cool anymore. And the constant, like, let's bring more and more members of the federal government and the bureaucracy and whatnot in on this, yeah, doesn't quite sit as well with me. Um, so yeah, there's that. That's the thing. I had to bring it up because if it was just Trump and maybe Elon Musk, I probably wouldn't have said anything. But seeing so many people that are like, oh, it's the FBI director. Oh, that's RFK Jr. He's the director of Health and Human Services now. Oh, that's like I could see them because they were like cage side, mostly looking bored. Um, oy vey. I don't know, guys. I just don't know about that. It's a weird thing to see. It's just a weird thing to see. Anyway, it's over an hour on this stuff. I mentioned already, fight of the night was Volkanovski and Lopez. No issues there. Performances went to Paddy Pimblett and Gian Silva. Dominic Reyes got done a little bit dirty there. I would have gone him over Paddy. But that's just me. Yeah, that was it. Full report is in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Go give it a read if you're so inclined. I always appreciate it. Okay. There is no UFC event this coming week. 2 weeks, we'll have the event in Kansas City, Missouri. Ian Machado, Gary, and Carlos Pracha. So full preview of that next week. But let's get into some news then. Okay, there we go. So I need to correct myself from last week. Aaron Pico has officially signed with the UFC. That has been confirmed over the past week. No debut opponent and no date has been announced yet. So the stuff about Movsar Evloev might have been prematurely reported, and I might have ran with it a bit too much. That's on me, mea culpa. So Pico is with the UFC, thumbs up to that. Don't make him make his debut in the Apex. Please, the warehouse sucks. No one likes the warehouse. Okay, gonna move quickly through some of this. So Dana White was asked about the UFC's negotiation for a new broadcast deal because Tuesday their exclusive negotiating period with ABC slash ESPN, because Disney owns ESPN and ABC, so their exclusive negotiation period with ESPN is over. And they will be able to freely negotiate their rights, the rights to some of their stuff for the foreseeable future. Now, I've talked a little bit about this, but Dana was asked about it, so he indicated that the big thing that they do is we do whatever the broadcast partner wants. So if Netflix is not interested in the weekly slop, if Netflix wants one event a month, that is a very big deal. So, hypothetically, the UFC model is about one pay-per-view a month, somewhere in that vicinity, 12 a year, give or take. If Netflix is like, okay, make these good, no bad ones, make these good, and no pay-per-view, because our audience has a bad relationship with it, and here's what we'll pay. If they're paying enough, the UFC might very well go, okay, you get 12 events a year, they will all be of high quality, they will be on this schedule, done and dusted. They might try to shop the weekly fight nights to other networks. That's very possible. I because as this got said, other people started reporting it. I kind of agree. Netflix does not need a weekly mediocre UFC fight night from the warehouse. Of all the streaming services that might want cheap disposable content, Netflix does not need that. Really doesn't need it. So they might be interested, and probably will be interested, in the higher end brand, the higher end of the product. Look, if you look at what they took from WWE, they have, depending on what region you're in, the 2 weekly shows and the pay-per-views is what Netflix has. Again, that's somewhat region dependent, but that's it. They don't do a lot of the other stuff that WWE likes to try and put on. They don't have NXT. They don't have any of the human interest specials. They don't have the whatever reality series competitions they're pumping out at the moment. They're not interested in that. Here's what we're interested in. And UFC might be in a similar position where Netflix has no use for The Ultimate Fighter, has no use for Road to UFC, has no use for the Contender Series. Just straight up no use for them. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. But the premium tier of what the UFC can offer is probably of value to Netflix. So whether this means the UFC just radically changes their business model, unlikely, or their second and third tier level content goes somewhere else, remains to be seen. ESPN might still do The Ultimate Fighter, might still do the Contender Series, but won't do the weekly fight nights. That might go somewhere else. And again, the big events might just go to Netflix. So we'll still keep an eye on how that might develop, but UFC has indicated that there's a lot of things they're willing to deal with. Especially, again, someone who may not like pay-per-view, well, depending on what you guys pay us, we might be fine with that. So more on that as it develops, of course. Okay, the UFC is set to make their debut in Azerbaijan. That will be June 21st. This is UFC on ABC 8. If you're wondering how well that relationship is going, they are just throwing that a full-on foreign card. Main event for that is going to be Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. Odd choice. I don't hate the fight, but they announced for this card an Azerbaijani fighter, Rafael Fiziev and Ignacio Bahamondes. 1, killer fight. 2, that should be your main event. You got a little bit of other regional guys on the list here. Tiger Ulanbekov. So Kyoji Horiguchi's return will be against Tiger Ulanbekov at flyweight. What else is on here? Boy, I do not care about a lot of this. Wow. Some of this is bad. Irina Alexeyeva and Claudia Segulia. Bleh. Daria Zelenziakova and Melissa Mullins. Bleh. Hamdi Abdelwahab and Muhammad Usman. Please no. Ismail Narudiev and Park Jun-young. Jun-young Park. I like the Iron Turtle, so okay, you're on my good side again, because Jun-young Park is kind of fun. And I actually don't... Narudiev's had a bit of a rough go. He had a rough go his first time through the UFC. Went 2-2. Left the promotion. He came back at UFC 308 last year. So Narudiev and Jun-young Park, that might be okay. Curtis Blade. We're trying to do Curtis Blades and Rivzan Kuniev again. Why? Ugh. But Fiziev and Bob Mondes is a really good fight, and I don't hate Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. So, but the UFC is knocking off another country on lists of places they haven't been before, but I've now been. So you know what? That's kind of cool. More on that as we get closer to the date, of course. And hang on, I don't need you anymore. I should have done this a minute ago. But here we are. Okay, that is good there. Now go away. Okay, here's the other sort of news item worth talking about. So the GFL is not a thing anymore, it seems. They canceled their first two events. They don't seem to have enough money to make their things happen, and color me not surprised whatsoever. Um, the number of people who try to get into MMA as basically a method of fleecing venture capitalists is shocking. I mentioned this about the PFL. Like, Don Davis views the PFL as a financial asset that he can try and sell off. Doesn't care about the fights. Don Davis stepped in it again this week, by the way. Got on social media, got pissy about the way some of his stuff was being covered, and came after Ariel Helwani, who I have my issues with, but like, you came after that guy over what? You didn't like the tenor of his coverage? Ugh. So the only thing Don Davis does is like piss off MMA fans. That's about all he does. And make decent sales pitches to people willing to throw money at his property. But this is what One Championship did for a while, as long as we were aware of their financials before they moved their corporate headquarters to somewhere that doesn't require them to report them. So, look, I like One. I want them to succeed, but again, their business is it's a lot of like fleecing venture capital investments from other people who have a lot of money instead of generating a lot on their own, and that's not sustainable. You do need infusions of cash from time to time. You really do. Especially early when you're trying to make headway in an industry that is monopolized by the UFC. But there's not just going to be an endless pile of people investing into your product to burn through. This is the problem that like Uber runs into. They operated a lot. They operated a loss for a long time. But they just got enough people who were willing to throw money at the problem because they thought it was the future. And turns out, no, you can't just burn through venture capital. Doesn't work. There is an endpoint to that. And GFL seems to not be a thing anymore. So if they said anyone that wants out of their deals with them is free to do so, and a bunch of people then immediately did. Um, Look, the PFL had some setbacks. They had another event over the last week, which was okay. But they've had a couple of like main events fall through, fighters having injury issues, and they're kind of in a rough spot as they're trying to get this season going. And now the GFL was never really a thing. Maybe I don't know. But for whatever the GFL was, it is not much anymore, and that's kind of where we are with that. So yeah, if that changes, I will let you know in the near future. Okay. Let's have a quick look through the old social medias. See if anything crazy is broken in the MMA world. If not, we will do plugs and get out of here. And I don't think there's anything MMA related that is breaking. No. No, doesn't look like it. All right. We're going to call it there then for the episode. So what do we got for plugs? All right. Monday on Damn You Hollywood, myself and Mark Radlich, we will be reviewing Warfare. Is this Alex Garland who directed this? Hang on, let me double check. Somebody of moderate note. There you are. Yeah, directed by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland. And Mendoza's a war vet. He did some work with The Last Outpost, which is actually a really good war movie if you're into that kind of thing. And I am on occasion. Um, it seems to be getting decent to good reviews. So the gimmick here is like the entire thing is displayed in real time, so that should be. I'm moderately interested. I'm again moderately optimistic. So Mark and I will be reviewing that on Damn You Hollywood. Okay, that's anyone else on that review with us actually? I don't think so, but I want to make sure. We'll see if Dorian Price might be there. We'll see how that goes. So if he is, be a good time. Dorian's usually pretty fun to talk with, especially the technical aspects of filmmaking. And my hunch is that's going to be kind of the highlight of this is like that portrayal of events and how that comes across as being portrayed in real time. So anyway, full review over on Damn You Hollywood on the W2M network. You can find if you look up Damn You Hollywood podcast, ours should be fairly near the top. You might get bigger podcasts that just have an episode that's like screw you to Hollywood. Um, anyway, tune in for that. Usual coverage this week. So WWE SmackDown on Friday. That is the last SmackDown before WrestleMania, which will be Saturday and Sunday. I was asked to cover NXT Stand and Deliver on Saturday. The timing will not work out for me this time around, unfortunately. But because I knew there wasn't a UFC event, I said yes to something else for that Saturday. And then I got the like, hey, can you do Stand and Deliver? And unfortunately, the timing doesn't quite work out with my previous commitments. So that's just where we are with that one. But yeah, next week we will be back here to preview UFC on ESPN 66. Yeah, 66. Which, you know what? It's not a bad card. I did a little bit of clowning on it last week, and there's some stuff that I don't love. Main event is good. Ikram Askarov and Andre Muniz is pretty good. Giga Chikadze and David Onama is actually likely to be fun. Anthony Smith's retirement fight against Zhang Mingyang, I don't know about that one. Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda is not a bad fight. Timmy Kwamba and Roberto Romero. Kwamba's decent action. It's not the best card in the world, but I think I was a little too harsh on it last time. We'll see if this holds up, by the way. A lot could change over the next week, so. But come back for that. Thank you all very, very much. I deeply appreciate it. Until next time, stay safe out there and continue to be well, be safe, and behave.